And welcome to another edition of Hoops Hitting Gems podcast. I'm your host, David Jones. Got another good edition as usual. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. Episode 101. This is the 8th episode of season 4. Like I said, all you guys that have been with us from 4 years now. It's hard to believe it's been 4 years. I can't appreciate you guys enough. Tonight, or this afternoon, Sunday afternoon, another great show. Very good friend of the show. Been on the show a number of times. We got Mr. John Tate from the Western PA Bruins AAU organization. How you doing today, brother?
I'm well, David. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's that time of the year, John. You got one of the biggest events in the country for the Tip-Off Classic, the Western PA Tip-Off Classic held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right in downtown in the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on this year, brother.
It's just year 11 for us total. This will be year 5 in the convention center, I believe. Easter weekend, you know what I mean? So there's some logistics. Make logistics make it a little bit harder. We offer a Friday, Saturday option or a Saturday, Sunday option, depending on what people's preference is, you know, with playing on the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, we'll do about 320, 325 in teams, which is a little down for us. It's because it's our second time running on Easter. First year we did about 280 Easter weekend. That was year 2 at the convention center. This year, 320 or so. We've given that Friday or Saturday option, but down from 475 last year. But that was the big. We expected that, with Easter weekend. Some, the older teams still want to play because they've got live period that following week. But the younger teams, they don't have to play, and so that's where we've seen, the most. The biggest drop off in the number of registrations, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. They don't have to play. And so that we understood that. Looking forward to, got some great teams coming in, a couple of new timers, and then the returning cast that seems to come back as a Portis year in, year out.
And that's a testament right there. Those teams that come back year after year, and the teams that come back year after year, they're by no means any slouch. When we start talking about West Virginia Thunder, Team Takeover, Mo's a regular guy that comes. We're talking about not just top teams in certain circuits. These are top teams, top 10, top 15 teams in the country yearly.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, FBC, Thunder, and Takeover. Those are probably 3 of the top 5 or 6 clubs, in the program and in the country. And so, and they've been, rocking with us since day one. And like you said, we take that as, we take pressure, we take pride in that, but also we feel pressure to make sure we're putting on a good event, for those guys, because, they could go anywhere, be welcomed with open arms. But year in, year out, I don't have to wonder if they're coming. You know what I mean? I just get the text, from Scott, from Mo, from Ron. Here's my teams. Here's the 8, 10, 12 teams we're sending. Mo's bringing 9 or 10 from that Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina area. Scott's sending 20. Ron's sending 10. You know what I mean? So those guys could go anywhere, and they come to us every year. And I always make it a point to, they're good friends of mine. Don't get me wrong, but I also understand that there are, if we didn't have a good event, the friendship wouldn't matter, and I wouldn't want it to. If we couldn't put on a good event for them and for everybody to come and make it worth their while, I wouldn't expect them to come. But I think they come understanding I'm gonna put on a good event for them because it means, I value the relationship.
John, the testament of the Bruins Tip-Off Classic is, as we know, this isn't live period, so the D1s can't come, but we know that they're watching. That's a testament. But man, you're packed out with D2, NAI, JUCO coaches, all of them still there because of the quality of the teams that are playing. Like I remember last year when we watched who was that? Thunder play a Takeover. When Thunder played Takeover last year, 17U.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was that was a preview of what the season was going to be like. And for me, it's those type of matchups, and not only those type of matchups, it's catching those as I like to say, those hidden gems early at your event that people that don't know about. I'll give you a great example. When I was at your event 2 years ago, I came across a young lady from the Michigan Storm, Anaya, and she's at Louisville now. And
Mhm.
I was like, who is this?
Yeah.
But it's that type of good bump, as we like to say.
Right.
You know, when you start to see 17U, 16U, another great example. AEBL last year, first year with you. And I saw them and I was like, oh, these young ones are good.
Right.
Well, it turns out they played 16U and they was tearing Adidas up last year. So now they got two top 10 or top 15 guards in 2028 class,
Mhm.
and they'll be right there at your event too. And they got about 15 to 20 Power 5 offers already. When we talk about Morgan Reckley and Kamora Momo Moore, like, man, when I say John, like, I think I text you from Adidas. I was like, bro, these two were killers. And then they got another one that's a shooter. They were all 8th grade last year. And I was like, and it was just by coincidence. They flew on the same flight as me. And I didn't even know who they were at first until I got to the event. And I was like, oh, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's that
I got a chance to see them last winter series.
Okay.
And that's when Keisa was introduced to me, KP, and we talked, and she ended up coming up, and got a chance to watch them play. Well, obviously at the winter series and at our event, and it's a really talented group. And again, she's someone I got to know over the last year or so, and they're coming back. 5, 6, 7 teams. I don't remember the exact number, but again, that we understand they're passing a whole bunch of tournaments to get here from Georgia, and so we feel the pressure to put on a first class event.
I agree with you, and you just said something that I want to step into even more. With me being a hometown Pittsburgh guy, I'm gonna support you regardless. But yes, I'd like to say, like, I've grown right with you at this event, but you got some of the top tier scouts coming as well.
KP, we'll have 2, 3 McDonald's All-American voters. Just literally within the last 15 minutes, got a text from oh my goodness, what's his name? Oh, I'm getting too old for this. Hold on, Dave. I want to make sure I give you.
I know Asher's coming. Asher's coming.
Asher Scouting. Dan Olson. I couldn't.
Dan Olson. Yeah, okay.
I couldn't remember Dan. Collegiate Girls Basketball Report. He just texted me, said he'll be there this year after a 3-year hiatus. We'll have basketball Bob Corwin back. Bob had really taken a kind of a step back after COVID. Was hesitant to travel. He ramped up a little bit more last year, and I think he's going to go back to a fairly full schedule this year. So he's coming out. He's coming in this year, and we're excited to have Bob back. Bob's just Bob's a living legend, really, in this thing, and so having him there is a big deal for us.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I always looked at this, as my platform has grown. Like, I was like, hey man, I'd love to come support, and then you were with open arms, and I appreciate you as growing in these couple years has been a blessing, but like, I consider you as one of the guys that have been pivotal for me to get to where I am now, man. And I always appreciate you for that, man.
You and I have talked, right? People have helped me. You know what I mean? And I have no problem helping, people who are doing things the right way, like you are. And you're giving a platform for these players, both girls and boys, to reach their dreams. So you already know. Anytime I can help you, former fashion, I'm only a phone call away.
Definitely, man. So, man, let's talk about, man, what this does for Pittsburgh, man. How big this is, and the mayor being on board and let's talk about how big this is, man, for the city.
Yeah, well, it's turned into something that I don't think I ever foresaw. An event. You know what I mean? We just wanted to put on the tournament. We weren't thinking it would turn into a quote unquote an event, and it's become that. when I'm getting contacted by the mayor's office or the Sports and Exhibition Authority or Visit Pittsburgh. I mean, they circle this weekend, our weekend on the map or on their calendar, and it becomes important to the businesses downtown. The hotels, the restaurants, they do great business our weekends, and so again, all those are relationships that I have now. So that was never a part of my plan. Again, we just wanted to put on the tournament, and it started at Pitt Hills High School, or actually started at Duquesne High School and McKeesport High School. Let me correct myself. And then we grew out of that. We added more gyms and more gyms and more gyms, and that the year before COVID, because that was the first year we were supposed to be in the convention center was COVID. The year before COVID, we had 50 or so courts running that last Sunday, and we were at 30. We were at maybe 20 something locations. It was it was too big. It was too big to, kind of, from a logistics standpoint, it became too big to operate. And that's when I got in touch with the people from the convention center, Sports and Exhibition Authority reached out to me, Sports Pittsburgh, and their director and stuff. And I'll never forget, she asked me, Jennifer Hawkins, great lady. She asked me, what would you do if you had the convention center? I said, I don't know, because I never thought about having a convention center. You know what I mean? And I owe them a big debt, because they kind of really walked me through the process, as did the people at Hoop Group who come in, the week before me or after.
Jam Fest, yes, sir.
Do the Jam Fest, and so Jordan and Rob Kennedy, those guys over there, it walked me through in those early years the logistics of not necessarily running a tournament, but running a tournament in a convention center. What's needed? People think you just open the doors up, and that's not the case. You need flooring vendors. You need hoops vendors, you need, workers, you need trainers, you need, all that stuff, and all that stuff is tied. There's a cost attached to all that stuff, and then you're dealing with unions, when you're dealing with the convention center, and understanding what they're, with what you have to have to work with them. So, it's been a learning process as we've gotten through it. We enjoy it. We're getting better at it, in terms of, what we need, understanding what we need to do and when we need to do it, who we're going to do it with. And you and I have talked about this. Like, I'm a big relationship guy. And so as long as you're doing right by me from a quality of service standpoint, I'm going to stick with you. And, we've had the same flooring vendors for a while. We've switched some hoop vendors because wasn't real crazy about the product 2 years ago. My guy Donnie Johnson has been my officials assigner since day one. He does a really good job. The officials organization up here in Western Pennsylvania, they do a ref camp.
Ref camp. Mm-hmm.
So they take our elite games and put them through the paces there. And I know they have some recruiters from some of the conferences, the mid-major Division I conferences, that come out and evaluate those guys and ladies about possibly officiating on the college level. So all that stuff goes into it. And then I've got to handle scheduling requests and want to play these people, don't want to play these.
Yeah,
got to be in by 9 and out by 2. Then working through all that today. We had version 1 come out on Thursday, Friday. Version 1 came out, taking getting all the feedback in, and then we'll work on version 2 tonight, tomorrow, and get the final version out late tomorrow night, early Tuesday morning.
Yeah, and now, like you said, you have McDonald's All-American voters. You have some of the top guys from the Northeast scouting. You got, like Asher is one of the top guys from the Midwest. You have people from the South coming as well. So you have your brand has expanded to the point, and I don't want to say your brand, because unless you're under a rock, everybody knows who the Western PA Bruins is, man. I mean, that's we're talking about just the tip off in itself, because yes, your teams every year are, you're a blue blood. Let's just call it what it is. You're a blue blood, bro. When it comes to this AAU stuff on the girls' side, and where the tip-off classic is now, man. Now you have it to the point where I tell people when they ask me about it, I was like, hey, if you've been to Run for the Roses, this is a junior version of it. Like, yeah, we know Run for the Roses is humongous, but I said, listen, I was like, if you take about half to about 30 to 50% of those teams, you have the Western PA Bruins tip-off now. And to even think of where you've grown for this, I'm like, it's crazy because, now you got the convention center, and if I'm not mistaken, now you got both sides of the convention center, right?
Yeah, we the only time we didn't have the entire convention center was 2 years ago. They had there was a conflict. They had a convention in the one side, and so we were upstairs and downstairs, and that was tough. I'll be honest with you, but yeah, we do the whole thing. 40 courts this year. We're only running on 28. We'll just have the upstairs this year. We have the whole downstairs, but we don't need it.
Okay.
We get people out. My goal is to always get people on the road by 3 or 4 on Sunday. With Easter, we're getting on the road a little bit earlier. We should be. I think our last game sets at 1 on Sunday. But yeah, we're. It's been a blessing, man. My wife and I laugh about it all the time. I remember the first tournament we ever did. We'd had 11, I think it was 11 teams at Duquesne High School, and I did the schedule on the back of a napkin. That's the doggone truth. I did a handwritten schedule on the back of a napkin and then typed it out and hung it up. And now I pay a scheduler a big nut to do the schedule now, and so that's where we can, man. And it's just a blessing, man. I'm blessed to get a chance to do what I love to do with people that I love to do it with. Some of my best friends, Scotty and Mo and Ron and my guy Robert Cash and Paul Zeiss and Spencer. Some of my guy Jamal from Slam. I get a chance to hang out in the gym for 2 days. 2-3 days with some people who I would hang out and have a beer with, you know what I mean? And so that is of itself is a blessing. It's a lot of work, but it's not hard work. You know what I mean? It's work that I find enjoyable because what this game has given to me, I'll never be able to give it back to it in full. So I'm just trying to chip away at it. You know what I mean? While I can, because it's where that round ball has taken me in my life and the things it's exposed me to, never be able to pay it back. So I just try to chip away at it a little bit at a time.
Man, and I love to say this as well. And, like some of my friends, and I say this with pride, because, we get to go all over the country and see different events and stuff like this. One of the biggest compliments for Pittsburgh, and, you can attest to this, some of my friends would be like, man, you guys roll tight from Pittsburgh. And I was like, man, listen, if you are in that quote unquote fraternity of playing basketball in the Western Pennsylvania area, and, for the people that didn't know, I tell them about round ball and everything else where, people have a lot of times, well, I thought, Western PA is football. Yes, that is true. Yeah. But there's a number of good players that came out of Western PA. And, once you get into this game and, you say you're from Pittsburgh, people start to like, oh, what part you from? And then they may give you a quick, a quick quiz. Where'd you go to school at? This person.
Right.
And, I can't tell you how many times people are like, do you know John Tate? I'll be like, who doesn't? That's my guy. I mean, yeah. So, and then it's automatically the tone lightens up, so to speak. Right. They're like, oh, you must know. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I'm like, he's one of the people we looked up to. I say he's a couple years ahead of me, but I was like, no, I'm from the East Side just like he is. So, no. And then it's become, John, like, players from the Bruins that are now coaches.
Right.
That's another big thing that people don't talk about. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, John's my guy. And I'm like, oh really? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, no, John came out a couple of years before me because you were, we're gonna date ourselves. You were
Yeah.
You
Long
were 3 years. You were
long
3 years in front of me. Yeah.
87.
Long time
It
ago.
was 87. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and I was 90, so you were in 12th when I was in ninth, man. And didn't even think about that. First of all, it's a blessing that every year we get to talk to each other and we're not talking about somebody's passed away. Unfortunately, we see a lot of people unfortunately don't get to make it to the next year. It's a
Yep.
blessing, but man, it's just how the whole coaching circle from Western PA has grown. The AAU, like even Slam, is big now. Slam got a name.
Yeah, Jamal. He and I talk fairly regularly. Nothing but respect for what he's done. You know what I mean? And it's funny, man. There's rivalry and stuff like that in competition, and I love competition. I love competing. That's I get up in the morning to prove my worth to myself and to compete every day against somebody, whether real or imagined. I'm
Yeah,
competing against somebody, and everything I do is just how I'm wired. And both of us being from Western Pennsylvania, everybody wants there to be some type of bad blood. Or, and we can compete on the floor and all that's great. And I'm for that 110%, but they can't get me to dislike him.
and it shouldn't be that way.
And I refuse to. And he and I talked about this about the times. As a black man, I've watched him, another black man, build up something real from nothing. Can't get me to dislike that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not wired that way. You can't get me to dislike, to bad mouth it. Now, is there differences on philosophies, on practices, on on thoughts and of the game and how a club should be run and what's important and what's not? Yeah. There's a million ways to skin a cat. We've got our way, they've got theirs. However, in terms of Jamal Woodson, nothing but respect, nothing but mad respect for the dude, and a genuine affinity for him because I know he cares about his players.
Yeah.
And again, I watch a black man in Western Pennsylvania, which is we ain't come here to sugarcoat nothing, right? Which in Western Pennsylvania, which is one of the most racially, charged and segregated parts of the country, succeed. I can't. There's all I can do is respect that, be proud of that, and do what I can to help him continue that, and that's what I do.
Absolutely.
And listen, I'll be honest with you. Some there's people in my clubs who ain't happy about my relationship with him, my affinity. But that's that's their issue, not mine.
John, let's talk about something. And I know coaches that are watching the show. What type of heat you got this year, bro, for the Bruins?
We got some heat, man. Some really, really good. Our 17U team's gonna be better than people think. Michaela Palmer Pressure from Erie's outstanding. She's a borderline Power 4 kid. The pre-transfer portal era, I think she's a Power 4 kid lock, right? Because she would go somewhere and have a chance to develop at a Power 4 level. Now with the portal, I'm not sure if her scholarship will be there at a Power 4 year one because those are the scholarships that are going to portal kids.
Mid-major, low D1, D2.
Right. That's the experience that can go help them win right away. That's my thought with that. But the kid can play. 6-foot wing, shoots the thing, handles the thing, competes, and really has a passion and a desire to get better. Jayla Kozer from Harrisburg, same thing. Long wing who can, who's athletic, competes, shoots the thing. Kaylee D'Angelo, really, maybe the best shooter we've ever had. She's only a 2020, she's a 2027, but she's on that 2026 team. Honestly, probably the best shooter I've ever seen.
Kaylee, is that Rocky or Danny's kid?
Don't get me the line, bro. Don't get me the line.
You know, D'Angelo's going to stick out for us because
yeah. But and then we got a kid, Kendall Halsman from upstate New York, 6'6". She's a 2027. She's gonna be really good. And then we Ava London, the point guard who's coming back from a ACL. We hope to have her back in May. So that 2026 group's going to be really good, surprisingly good, I think, in terms of what because we got some unknown pieces that people aren't aware of. 2027 group's going to be, I think, okay as well. We got a lot of 28s playing up on that group. Really, really guard heavy. But different types of guards, though. Some scoring guards, some people who run the floor, some people who can really shoot the thing. So excited about what we've got, and then we've got an 8th grader, man, Trinity Finney, who right now is where she sits right now as an 8th grader is the best 8th grader we've ever had. Now,
wow, that's that. Oh,
right, and
now, John,
I know. Trust me.
Okay.
It's I don't throw those words around lightly. That's
25 years, John.
But what I'll tell you is this: when we saw her at tryouts, we had some people say, "Oh, you got a kid from Ohio coming." We saw some of our other parents say, "Yeah, we see our kid. We were in this tournament in Ohio, talking to the mom. We told her to bring the daughter to tryouts." Oh, okay, great, whatever. So we're at tryouts. And we're registering kids, and the 8th grade group was in there trying out, and Robert Cash comes outside and said, "Man, you're gonna come in here right now." I said, "Man, I got a line at the door, man. I can't get up. I got a line at the door, man. I'll be in there." He said, "Man, come in here right now." I said, "Robert,
what that mean if Cash said that?"
I said, "Robert, look at all these kids in this line, man. Quit playing with me." He said, "Man, forget them kids in that line. Come in here right now." So I get up, and she was completely terrorizing that 8th grade tryout group. I mean, it was borderline unfair. And sat and talked with her mom, great mom, great mom's a great young lady who we're getting to know. And we just, got a chance to watch her, in tryouts, and my coaches are coming over like, this is unreal, like how good this kid is. And so they played in the winter series. And I didn't go. It was the first winter series was up in Spooky Nook, and I didn't go. Me and my wife had some stuff to do that weekend. So we're running errands. They played at 11 o'clock on Saturday. That was their first game. And we're running errands. I had my phone on the charger in the car, in the cup holder. And it started vibrating. Text alerts, missed calls, about 11:25, 11:30. I just started laughing. And my wife said, "What are you laughing at?" And I said, "Our 8th graders this is their first game of the day. And I guarantee you every text and call on that is about the 8th grade I was telling you about, Trinity." She's like, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because nobody ever seen this kid play before. Now they want to know where she came from." I said, "Go ahead, pick up the phone and look at it." And she just started laughing. It was, "Oh, you got one. Who's this kid?" You know what I mean? Just in that she, to put pressure on her, you know what I mean? She's got a chance to, she's a McDonald's level, that level kid, all, and obviously to get there, a lot of things have to happen, right? You got to keep working, you got to stay healthy, you got to be lucky, all those things. But from a talent and skill tool level standpoint, she's got that level of ability.
I'm gonna check her out. That's just like when I saw Momo last year at your event. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Yeah. So let me ask you this, man. And this is one of the last questions I'm gonna ask you. You're about opportunity. How many times over these past 20 years have people come to this event and made a name for themselves?
More than I could count. I wouldn't even know. You know what I mean? I remember, like you said, Momo last year. I remember the kid from BBA who, is with the Thunder now, Ivana. I remember Cadence Samuels.
Oh, yeah, from TakeOver. Yes.
He was one, honestly, of all the kids I've been around, that I obviously not counting the ones that I've coached, but all the kids that I've got a chance to watch play, she's probably one of my all-time favorite kids I like to watch. I
Mhm.
just really enjoyed watching her play. And we, been a lot of tournaments with Ron, and we go to his event, he comes to ours. We go to some, we'll see each other at some different events. And when she was with him, before she graduated, I would go watch her play all the time. I just really enjoyed how that kid played the game. Same with D, from the Thunder. She came to our event as a seventh grader and played. I want to think Scott had her playing up at ninth grade, I think, and she was a seventh grade, but she was the best kid on the floor. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that was kind of a takeoff point for her. Yeah, there's been a bunch, man. I really those are some of the ones that probably stick out, more for me than some others, just because I remember Ron and Scott telling me about how good those young ladies were, and encouraging me to go see them. And then that year 2018, I think it was,
Mhm.
when we had with Takeover and FBC were 1-2 in the country, and they played at North Hills High and North Allegheny High School.
Mhm.
We literally had to shut down the other, North Allegheny's got those three courts.
Yeah.
We had to shut down the games on the other side because there were on each side because there were too many people in there trying to watch the game. And that's when, Takeover had oh brother. Takeover was loaded. That's when they had Angel and and then FBC had Camilla and Treasure
Yeah.
and Madison and Raven was a little baby. I think she was a freshman on that team, and
Mhm.
they were just unbelievable. That was so again, those are some of the memories that stick out in terms of kids that individual kids that we've helped that might have been a little bit under the radar, but took that big first step with us. With our event, and that's again, it's what it's about, right? You want to put people in position to help live out their dreams.
And
So,
Caden's sister, Jesus, she'll be there this year.
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing her play. There's a handful of games I'm looking forward to. The Mimi Thero kid from
Yeah.
Fresno Valley.
Yeah.
I got a chance to watch her in high school, and it's it, it's so hard when you're playing double A basketball and you're
Yeah.
that talented to really show everything that you can do. So I'm really looking forward to getting to see Chance her play, against other high quality, high level people.
Is
And
she with Slam, John?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Looking forward to seeing them play. The kid from uh what's the kid's name? The kid from Always 100 that's going to Louisville.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know you're talking
Yeah,
about.
looking forward to see her play. Michigan, the Michigan crossover, EYBL. They're bringing their EYBL teams down. Look forward to see, and then the kid from Durant, whose name I can never remember. She's really good too.
Okay.
So again, there's a bunch of good teams, bunch of really good players. Looking forward to it. Yeah, I like to get all my work done, ahead of time, so I can carve out that couple hours in the middle of each day where I can go game to game and just
Yeah.
watch people play.
Hey man, listen, man. You know, even though I've been gone for a long time, for 25 plus years, gosh, oof, I've been gone a long time, man. I can't say how proud I am of what you've done with this event, man, and the support that you get. That's always been one thing I tell people as well. You know, when you're from Western PA and that team used to make it out of Western PA to go to the States, everybody banded together to support that team that would go to Hershey to win state. And I feel like it's the same thing with this here, because a testament to you being the person you are, so many of those people from our time period come to support you just to come and
Yeah, of
watch. You know what I mean?
course.
It's almost like family reunion for me, because I get to see all those guys I haven't seen in years,
For sure.
and watching games. And man, just keep doing your thing, man. I know I'm proud of what you're doing, man, and I'm always going to support it.
Appreciate you, my brother. It means a lot. Looking forward to seeing you next week. You know you need something, just give me a call.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk soon. I'll see you on Saturday, brother, okay?
Appreciate you, my brother. Have a good one.
All right, John. Take care, brother. That's my guy, John Tate, right there, man. What he's doing, not only with the Western PA Bruins, but what he's doing with the Bruins Tip-Off Classic. As you all heard, he's turned that from an 11-team event to, at the height of it, 420 teams. And, because this is Easter weekend, that's the only reason it's not at that level. But, this game is always about relationships. And, I pride myself in relationships with coaches and AAU directors, and he's one of many that, I like to be able to be, like they say, a phone call away. Our next guest, man, I'm excited to bring him on from Fairleigh Dickinson University. Coach Jeremy Thompson, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for coming on the show, man. I always keep an eye on what you guys do up there. A young lady I used to date many years ago graduated from FDU, man. And so, I'm very familiar with that. She's a Jersey girl. Man, I wanted to bring you on for the people that don't know about your program, because although I'm from Pittsburgh, I live in Atlanta. So, a lot of times those teams that are in the Northeast, sometimes people don't know about them. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to bring you on and talk about your program. So let's talk about FDU, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were very fortunate. We just came off a great year. I appreciate you having me on to kind of chat about it. I was just listening. Tate's got some kids that are real ballers, and I've seen them on the road already. So it's nice to see how well they're doing. But yeah, we just came off our best year. We got the job 2 years ago. Stephanie Gately, who's our head coach, she is probably the best in the business. I can't think of anybody else that does it like her. She built toughness. She's competitive. I mean, she's got a history of winning. She broke 700 wins this year. Wow. She's, I think, 6th all-time winningest Division I coach that's active, and 6th all-time. I mean, she's no joke, and she's a great leader, great people. And we were fortunate enough, myself, we have other citizens, Jessica Simmons, Ty Rosier, who were with us. And, we got in there last year. We had 4 kids coming back. The rest of them had followed the other coach to Iona. None of them had played. I think that average was like 5 rebounds and 4 points from the 4 of them. And, we had to bring in some pieces. It was, we really grinded out recruiting, a lot of player development in terms of some of those players that were still there. And this year was just incredible. I mean, we were able to go 29-4 with losses coming to Syracuse, UConn on the night that Chino broke the record. That was a pleasure. I appreciate them having us, and Rutgers. And then we get the highest seed in NEC history. We were the 15th seed going into the tournament to play TCU, and they flew out to TCU. We're out there for a week, and I thought we did a good job. Didn't get the result we wanted, but we kept it in within 20, and a little foul trouble. It's tough playing on the road in the NCAA tournament, but man, it was a great experience this year. I'm excited.
So for people that don't know, what conference do you play in?
So we're in the Northeast Conference, the NEC, which has had some movement over the last couple of years. Sacred Heart and Merrimack going into the MAC. But right now in our conference, it's Mercyhurst is a new member of our conference. There's ourselves, Wagner, LIU, St. Francis is in our conference, but they're leaving because they are moving to Missouri, which is wild if you think about it. Yeah. Central Connecticut is in there. Stonehill, they played them in the championship. Chicago State is a new member, not on probation because they went from D1 independent straight into our conference, which was big for us. So tough trip to go out there for one game, but it's they're in there, and then that kind of rounds it out for the most part.
Okay, and when I like to ask these questions as well because everybody has different philosophies. Like you said, you just came from being on the road. When you're out looking at potential prospects, and I like to talk about this, what do you look for in prospects when you're going out, whether it's the circuit or independent? What do you look for?
That's a great question. I mean, I think there's a few things. I do our international recruiting, and so when we're overseas or whatever, you don't have months on months to watch these kids in person. You've got a very short period of time.
Mhm.
Now the recruiting calendar, we're kind of bouncing all over the place trying to see all of our kids. So I think you got to prioritize what you're looking for quickly. Um, I think the most important things first thing is can you guard? You can't play in our system if you can't defend. It just would never happen.
Mhm.
Can you at least guard the position that you're playing would be my first question. And then my second question would be do you have the ability to guard? If you're a point guard, you got to be able to guard 1, 2, maybe 3. And if you're the 5, can you only guard a 5 and then we got to switch all the time? Or, can you guard the 4 or 5 and we have some flexibility? We are a very defense-oriented team. Coach Gately's had one of the top defensive teams in the country for her whole entire career. So, that's a big deal. And we also, if you move the ball well and, offense creates itself, we pride ourselves on that. I think the second thing, and I don't know, everybody's got different priorities. And I've learned this. I was a head junior college coach and went to 2 national tournaments back to back. And then, I saw it live and in person with Coach Gately is you can be as good as you want, but the team that has the better culture in a 50-50 game is going to win. And I don't think, it's not valued enough. I know with the transfer portal and everybody shifting around, but at the end of the day, if 2 teams are square up even, it's not going to be, it's the team with the better culture, the team that can stick together, get through the adversity. So I'm watching body language very carefully, how people are talking to their coaches, how they're talking to their teammates. But then if you're talking specifics, it's can you get up and down the floor? Can you shoot it? I mean, everyone can put it on the rim, but are you somewhat consistent? Is there room for development? And then, our post coach, Jessica Simmons, I work with our guards. Jess Simmons works with our post. She did an incredible job. Tanisha Brown, who came in 2 years ago, she graduated and she's headed to Providence to do her grad year, which is super exciting for her. But, our player development is key. You just have to have the foundation to be able to do it.
And you said something which leads me into my next question. How important, because you said you guys, it's important to be able to play D. And like you said, that most people are pretty decent scorers, but how important is it for someone to come into FDU system and know the shell drill coming out of high school?
I mean, we break everything down in detail. And I think when we have recruits come visit practice and when we have, high school teams or players, whoever it is, come visit practice, I think you may be surprised at how much breakdown we do. I mean, the shell being a small part of it. I mean, we go into 2-on-2 breakdowns where we're constantly rotating, where, we ice everything. So, we're down, whatever your terminology is. So we're teaching, we had 5 freshmen this year. We're teaching icing screens in the summer, how to do it. And it's not something that I thought maybe it was something you would pick up very easily, but we're still teaching it coming in the fall. So these defensive concepts, in high school, you see your basic ball screen coverages, some of the better teams will give you, what they're able to, and that's great. But, you've got to, we play a matchup zone. It's not just standing in one area. If your side of the zone empties out, do you know how to X out of it? Do you know how to, how far should you drop? What are you doing if they overload? So the shell drill, but the understanding of spacing and the understanding of
Principles of it, yeah.
And we spend a lot of time on how you guard people, like with the correct hand, when you're in the passing lanes. Also understanding if we're going to run people off the line, if we're going to, play them as a shooter, play them as a driver. We're very detailed about it, so you've got to be able to defend in multiple ways. So, the bare minimum is being able to understand the concepts. The second is being able to execute them.
I want to step away from the court real quick because this is just as important. Grade-wise, to get into FDU, what is needed to get into FDU?
I mean, FDU is as a basketball player, student athlete, like you need to have a solid GPA, but we're not, our team had a 3.6 GPA. So that'll tell you a little bit about the academics. So we are looking for students with a strong academic ambition, But I mean, if you have a solid GPA and you have good work ethic, then we're looking that you covered the student part of it. But we want motivated kids. Like just because you could have a 2.5 and that's okay if you're motivated and you work hard. I came from JUCO, so in my experience, it's about your work ethic and your motivation. So that's what we're focused on is the person itself and what their focus is. We've got, for a Division I team, we have players in nursing, we have players in health science, we have people that want to be surgeons and doctors, and we still find a way to practice every day and get it done. So, it's about your willingness to really grind it out and do your job.
Now, is FDU test optional or it's just not needed?
I don't think it's not required. So
Okay.
I think it's test optional. At least in my first 2 years there, we haven't had that. So
now the next big question as we come back on the court, you guys are 29-4. In the times we live in now, that means everybody's looking at your team to say, hey, can I pick one of those guys off and possibly go high major, whatever the case may be. Are you guys acclimated to the new norm now of basically having to be in the portal every year now?
It's definitely it's a new system. I mean, it's amazing just the conversations that you have and what you're hearing and what you're seeing transpire. We were 29-4, we were undefeated in our conference. So going in the end of the year when we played on the national stage in the tournament, I mean, even when we played UConn, you kind of anticipate if you play really well on a national stage, you're going to draw attention. I mean, that's the nature of this game, and being able to pay. I mean, we're not talking about paying kids like a small amount of money. We're talking about paying kids like adults. We're paying,
yes.
And this is not we're asking kids to play a game and pay them like adults. So that's a real significant amount of money. So, it's something we're aware of. I don't think it really affects our recruiting so much. So like we know what we're looking for, and obviously. I mean, listen, we had some really talented players. Our post player is a great example. She's headed to Providence. Wow. But we did help her. She was ready to graduate and go pro. And obviously with the new college basketball, there's some more opportunities. So, we helped her get there. So I think, we understand that if you get to a certain place, you want to move on. And I think our whole staff gets that. And we're going to try and develop you. We take a lot of pride in that. And we'll help you go make life-changing money if you can make life-changing money. I don't think our head coach, Coach Gately's gotten kids to the pros, so no one is shy about that. But our priority is if you do want to do that, which is fine, you can graduate in 3 at FDU or, however you want to do it. You got to get your degree. We're not going to support you leaving for money in life-changing money if it's not, not life-changing and you're not getting your degree. But we have kids with great loyalty. Sure, when our point guard had a great game against UConn and blowing up on Twitter, and it's new, especially when you're a freshman. It's a freshman guard, so it's a lot. But we have good guidance, and we're fortunate where we have good guidance. And I think the kids understand that loyalty pays itself back in the end.
I know this is kind of premature, but we'll stick with it a little bit. The returners coming back as of right now from last year. Who do you got coming back?
So we got coming back. We have our point guard who was rookie of the year. We're bringing back. Let's see here. We're bringing back our post player who's a junior, so she'll be back. She played pretty solid minutes. Like Bella Toomey, Rebecca Owusu, who came from Riverside Hawks. She'll be coming back. She's also like a junior wing. Probably one of the best players in the league and doesn't get recognized for it, but her numbers are outstanding. Lily Park from New Zealand, 6'1", can play the 3, 4, 5. She's coming back. And then we have, I think, the best scorer in the Jersey Shore, Reese Downey, is coming in along with a few others. So we're bringing back a pretty significant group of kids. All 5 freshmen are coming back. We only had 2 players transfer, one transferring back home because they wanted to go home, and another kid who was injured and obviously made the decision to do try to go somewhere else. But we're bringing back the core. We are losing our 2 point guards that were vet experience, and that we're in a win right now environment. You got to earn right away. So we're fortunate that I think Coach Gailey says it best. You got to recruit from winning programs because winning is hard no matter how you cut it. And I think, it's easy to look from afar and be like, oh, yeah, they went 16-0. Every game, whether it was close or not, is a grind. And if you have kids that know what it's like to win, teaching them how to win is different. When we got there in our first year, the schedule was done. We opened up at Iowa against Caitlin Clark when she started her senior year. That was wild. And then going into break, we played at Seton Hall, home against UNLV, at Vanderbilt, and then boom, conference play. Wow. So we didn't go into conference play with a winning record, and teaching how to win is so important. So experience from a winning program, and our kids, a lot of our kids have that, really pays itself forward a lot.
I like to ask this, and because you're over this, I'm interested because outside of the portal, this is the new norm as well. You said you're over the international kids, and I would have to assume since you're over the international kids, that's now a big part of FDU's program now, getting one or two or even more international prospects.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Gately has a history of recruiting internationally very successfully, and she's been my mentor for 15 plus years. So I'm very, very fortunate and grateful to have been put in a position to work for her and then be guided into, recruiting internationally with all of her connections and experience, and then being able to build on my own. We have a kid from New Zealand on our roster who's going to be a senior. I was out in New Zealand and Australia for 3 weeks. We have a 2027 guard who's committed, and we have a 2026 4 player that's coming in. We've had success with the international player. We kind of look everywhere. I mean, I don't think there's an area that we're not looking. I think the key is that certain areas, I mean, with the being able to pay players and all that, and this new NIL money, these players from internationally are drastically affected because there are rules that you have to be able to, you can't pay them, and then there's different ways that people have found to do it, but it's a challenge. So we've got to make sure that we are diligently looking. And I think so far, we've had a kid from Sweden, who's a point guard, who was very successful with us. You got to really look, and you got to know what you're able to offer them and what position you're able to put them in, and what your real pitch is, because, when they get over here to the States, it's a whole different experience. We've been fortunate. We run a European ball screen offense that Coach Gately has run forever, and it's an easy transition. So we haven't had any international players struggle with those barriers. Australia and New Zealand being 2 places that obviously English speaking, but have tremendous basketball. So we've had a lot of success there too.
Yes, they do, because the Australian teams now come to run for the Roses on a regular basis now. And now people are starting to see how good those teams really are. And to your point, they run exactly what you're talking about at these events, and they're deadly with it because it's a different brand of basketball that a lot of the younger folks haven't seen yet. So they're trying to adjust on the fly, but it's attractive to college coaches because they're like, oh, they can be effective in my system if we run something similar to that. So, and I think that is so important because a lot of people always had the misconception that in AAU or, circuit ball or independent ball, it's the misconception of rolling the basketballs out and just watching somebody get a bucket. You guys are looking for so much more than that, and a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the assumption is when you watch, certain AU or whatever, it's like, yeah, this is just one-on-one, or they're just whatever, or just certain styles of play. I always yes, we run a motion offense. That's one of our primary offenses, but the amount of time that we spend in the intricacies of this offense, and not necessarily, we don't make any decisions for them. At the end of the day, they're on the floor running what they want to run. We have our calls and what we're seeing, but there are so many different options in how you play, and then things you can do depending on what coverages you're seeing that are within that. that you really do have to understand it. I think it's always funny, you know, sometimes you'll talk to someone and they'll say, oh, I'm transferring because I'm not a good fit for this system here. Well, the question is, yes, I do think occasionally you find yourself going to a place for the wrong system. I don't think that can happen.
Yeah.
If you're really doing your due diligence as a student athlete in high school, then you should be watching these teams play. Like, we're not, if you don't know how we play, then you either got to go watch or you should come to a practice and have an understanding, because we don't do anything overly complicated. We have players that have come in with less experience running sets and we've taught it to them, but you have to understand what you're walking into and be open-minded. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that, like, you know, being an international kid and coming over and being able to play in a ball screen offense, that's a lot of international basketball. It's great. But we've gotten kids from other places, you know, where maybe they weren't doing that and they were playing a lot in the half court, and it's not, are you a good fit for the, you know, the coach or whatever. It's you got to be open-minded to play, you know, play basketball and just learn the concepts. You know, everybody's got something a little different and tweaks it a little different, but at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing.
That's a great answer, because what you just said earlier is one of my biggest gripes with these coaches, with the directors, with parents, and even the players. Like, okay, FDU offers or FDU doesn't offer, whatever the case may be. You have so many people that are hungry for the D1 or bust mentality, and they don't understand. They go to FDU, and like you said, there are situations where it's not a good fit. But my first question is, okay, you've been on a visit. I get that. Or you've been to a game. I think it's so much more important that you need, just like you guys say, like, when you guys are looking at a kid, you don't usually go off of, I've seen them one time and I'm sold. You guys like to go 2, 3, sometimes 4 times when you're really serious about that kid. I have to put that same precedence on the family. If you called and said, hey, we're interested in your kid, and I understand a lot of parents don't understand this, and high school coaches and even some AAU coaches don't understand this. I think it's somebody's responsibility in that camp to get an understanding of, okay, I know what this kid can do. It's not just, it shouldn't be, I'm going to send them there and they not have a full understanding. Like you said, have you watched the tape? Have you watched the game if you're interested in them? Oh, yeah, coach, I took a look, you know, this, that. Okay, well, what did they do? Like, someone should be having an in-depth conversation so they get an understanding to say, well, they run this, they run this. I need to learn this if I'm going to be successful there. Or sometimes you can divulge earlier to say, that might not be me. But it's the fact that you're D1, they're like, well, I'll get to learn it. Then we get to this portal situation that we're in right now.
Well, I agree with you. You're 100% right, and you got to get to know the people involved. You know, that's 100% right. I think it's a twofold thing, and I think Coach Gailey, our head coach, she knows it better than anybody, and I love that about her. And I'll say that the first piece of it is, we generally, and obviously there's circumstances where we don't apply to this, we generally won't offer you unless you come to campus. So unless you make a visit to our campus and show us that you are interested in our interest in you, like, we're not just going to offer you so you can put it on social media. Like, our offers are all genuine. They're not a favor to anybody. Our offers are because we saw you, we liked you play, we believe you're talented, and you came to campus because you showed a level of interest, and so that's why we put the offer out there. And Coach Gailey, you know, that's for, you know, obviously extenuating circumstance. Certain kids can't get on a visit right away, but you know, that's important, is the person to person thing. And then, you know, you say, you know, the people in the camp, you know, and I think, you know, there are some AU programs and tons of them that do a tremendous job of getting their kids to the right place. Like, you know, obviously the Bruins have done a great job of that. You know, a ton of people, you know, Mike Toro, Riverside, has gotten his kids scattered all over the place. They've all played and done a tremendous job. But I think, you know, there is a piece of it where you're kind of hearing the same thing, where I have people, and I tweeted this out, and all these people, comments, whatever, you know, oh, I have a kid for you that can play at your level. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what that means. You have a kid that can play at my level. So there's all these kids in the transfer portal that you coached, and I'm not saying you specifically, X. So you advise this kid to go to St. Bonaventure because they were that level, but then they didn't play. So were they that level, or was it not a good fit? And then, like, what does that mean? And I my biggest thing is the same thing over and over again. It's not about, there's a difference in level between us and Michigan. I mean, that's clear. When we played UConn, there's a difference in level. But I mean, when you're talking about, some of these conferences and what we're doing, basketball is basketball. And I used to say this to my kids when I was in junior college. Like, I had, a couple of kids from the Bronx that were tremendously talented and looking at different Division I schools. And, one of our players visited some schools in the Midwest and visited some schools on the East Coast. I hope you want to, and I would tell them all the time, you got to want to wake up in Kansas on a Wednesday, in the middle of December, and be happy if there's no practice, because there are parts of your day outside of how much work you put in at this level that you're on your own. So, like, if Kansas is not your thing on a Thursday night after 6:00, like, you got to make sure you check these things out. It's the same as when I'm looking for a job. Like, I'm not just going to go, jump anywhere. I want to make sure that it's people I'm comfortable with. This process should be, and I think it should be, a detailed process. I think that part of it has been moved away from that because of quote unquote level and assumptions on what that means or where people should go without doing your full amount of research. And then, as much of it, and it's, the transfer portal is significantly part of college coaches' responsibility too. There's all sorts of responsibility on us as well. But I think there's a dual responsibility in making sure that you're educated on where you're sending your kids and how you're helping them.
Man, I want to jump on something that you said, and when you said, when you get the email of, I have a kid, I know your response shouldn't be to quiz that coach, but it almost is like, do you even know what the NEC is? Do you know? Can you name me one team? And I say that, like, with me being from Pittsburgh, of course, I'm going to know the NEC because, Robert Morris used to be part of the NEC. But what people don't understand, like, when you say those things, number one, you hear that probably about at least 500 times in a month, at least. Yeah, I got a kid. I got a kid. I got a kid. And I would like to, since this is a platform that a number of people watch, I would like to challenge people. If you're going to contact Coach Thompson, don't just, I have a kid. It's, I would like to say it's going to catch your attention more and say, hey, I have somebody that's a fit for you. I see you guys run this type of offense. And now these highlights I have will show why it's a good match. And even if you don't agree, you would say, okay, at least he's watched what we've done. And he's saying, this is why I think this kid is a match for FDU. That, wouldn't you be in tune to pay more attention to that kid if they were detailed like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. I think, I understand that, AAU is not a full-time job all the time, and that you don't have the ability to, watch 360 offenses and say to yourself, all right, I know that the NEC is right, but I always think about it like in terms of the different types of outreach that we've gotten, and the same thing that we do is like, yeah, if you're trying to find a home for a kid that you believe is Division I level, you might not know a ton about the NEC, but you could take a look on our website and you could do a little bit of a background just to know what you might be dealing with. You don't have to know a ton because, it's not that amount of information out there. But I always look at it like, whether it's the coach writing the email, the player, whoever, like, I open all the emails. Even when a coach calls me and says, I have a kid for you, even if there's no, like, even if there's not a huge thing, I'm going to look, because I understand that these coaches, I coached AAU. You got to work hard to get your kids to move to the next level. And I know that grind because I ran my own AAU program in Connecticut. I was at the D3 level, the JUCO level. So I know that grind of recruiting, and those assistant coaches and head coach in AAU, I've been there, and you have to grind to get people to see your kids, especially with nowadays.
Yeah.
However, I will, shout out the creative emails. Like, I had a kid that we headed out to Spooky Nook, and I got a DM from a kid, and the first sentence is basically what you can see when you see the DM is "Don't miss out." I was like, let me read this because I don't want to miss out. But that was smart, and we've gotten emails, I've gotten people outreach, whether it's players or coaches, like they know us. We like to shoot the three. So consistent 3-point check. I'll read your email. Doesn't matter what you said after that. I'll read it and I'll check it out. And I'll watch the film just because like that's the right thing to do. It's for the kids and we should be doing our research too. That's a responsibility of college coaches is to make sure we're doing our research and that the fit is right on our end too. But I think it's a dual responsibility to be educated on who you're talking to. The same way I'm not just going to call someone randomly unless I understand something. And, same way. And I think that makes it a smoother process. Do I think it's perfect? Never. But do I think that it helps find and determine what's right? For sure.
Last question. I always like to ask this question to anybody I bring on the show. This is your time right here. Why FDU?
It's a great question. I think, the work speaks for itself. I mean, we are our men's program. They went to the NCAA, beat Purdue. They showed the world what it was all about, and I think the women's program followed right up. And, I think if you take a look at it from just a distance at the people who were involved, whether it's our head coach, Coach Gately, who's had success her entire career and has placed a huge amount of value on faith, family, and the people around her. You look at the development, the player development with myself, I take a lot of pride in it. Coach Jessica Simmons, who, probably one of the best post player developers in the entire country, and proof is in the work. Tanisha Brown's now headed to Providence, and she's a wonderful kid. And then you look at, we come in, we take over, or whatever we were, 14 and 16, and then we come around next year by taking your time and doing your due diligence. And, we were 16-0 in conference and 29-4. Those things only happen if you pay attention to the details and the experience is good for the kids. I know that I can tell somebody, a parent or a kid, that if you come to FDU, you will have the most detailed care that you could possibly ask for. You're not going to go unnoticed. Whether you play or don't play, you're going to be treated equally. We treat every single person from a walk-on to our starting guard, whatever it may be, equally. And I think that you're also going to have a wonderful experience. I mean, you talk about in 2 years, we went out and played Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, Haley Van Lith in the NCAA tournament, so it's, in Rutgers, Syracuse, but I think FDU is the place to be because of the people. And it's so hard to find a group of people that you love dearly and that you can really be around. But when you're comfortable and you love the people you're around, staff, players, I've never been around a team like we've had in the last 2 years where there's just zero drama. Everybody loves each other. We step on the court, yeah, everybody's going to try and kill each other because it's a competitive atmosphere. But I'm telling you, winning is fun. So can't look at a record 16-0 in conference and say they're not having a good time. We had a good time and we celebrated it too. But the development is there, and I don't, for me, I look at it and I say, where can I go to a place where I'm going to get better as a player? I'm going to have the mentorship of people around me to help me find a job, a career, and also just get through and learn and grow as a young adult. And then I think, on top of that, being able to win and have a good time doing it, those things make FDU the place to be right now, especially if you're locally in Jersey. I couldn't name a better place to be playing women's basketball right now.
And you're right, especially at 29-4. I mean, those results speak for themselves. Hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on to talk about FDU. I'm sure I'm going to get a number of people that are going to ask me, how can they contact the staff if they're interested in an elite camp or a team camp? How can they reach out to you guys?
So I can tell you as a small plug, our elite camp will be probably August 9th, August 10th. But my email is on j.thompson2@fdu.edu. It's on the website. You can email me. I handle our elite camps or anyone on our staff, and they'll send it over. But we're very open. If you send me an email about anything, I will get back to you or do my very best to, and I think that's what we're a very personable group of people. So elite camps, if you've got questions about recruiting, if you have interest in FDU, if you want to see a practice like at the Division I level and you're curious what that looks like, we're a very open program and we like to help. So feel free to hit me up, whether it's social media or, my email on the FDU website. I'm happy to help. And I know that our staff is as well.
Hey man, I appreciate that, man. You were awesome tonight, man. And I look forward to seeing some more. I'm going to try and make it up to a practice next season, man, to see, what you guys are looking at. Can you repeat that 29-4, man?
Hey, we're trying to the goal is to win and produce the best possible experience. But I have to thank you for having me. You've done a lot for the game. I've seen the guests that you've had on here. They've done a lot for the game, and it's nice to know that there's places out there where you can talk hoops and it's getting heard. We're talking women's hoops. People are listening. This is obviously the time for women's basketball, and you've been a big part of growing that. So I'm fortunate enough that you invited me out here to get to speak. But you're welcome anytime, of course. If I find my way down that way, recruiting, which I am sure I will this summer, we'll have to get up and link. But
absolutely.
I appreciate everything you've done, and I really appreciate you having me on here today. It was really a pleasure chatting.
Definitely, man. It's you gotta understand when you come on for the first time, you consider family. So this won't be the last time you'll be on here.
Anytime. This was a blast, and I appreciate everything you've done for the game. People have to make sure they tune in. This is a great platform.
Definitely. I appreciate you, man. We'll be talking soon, man. You enjoy the rest of your weekend. You take care, okay?
All right. You too. Have a good rest of the weekend.
All right. You too. Coach Thompson, listen, for you people don't understand, he just gave you some really good nuggets. They were 29-4, and they went to the tournament. I'm willing to bet a number of you guys had no idea about FDU unless they played in the region where the tournament was. You might have heard that name. But these are the type of stories where people need to understand it's not no walk in the park to go to Farley Dickinson. They have a good program. They're 29-4. When you have that style of coaching, you have to understand, even if them being in the NEC, those type of coaches aren't there long. And I'm not saying that negatively. I'm giving a compliment. When they're winning like that, you got high majors paying attention to say, we want that type of program. But it also helps to understand in this world we're living in the transfer portal, you guys that are trying to move up, they just gave you the blueprint like, hey, you come here, you can move up to a higher major because that's just the world we're living in now with this transfer portal, where if you go to a FDU and you play well, you're going to get seen and you're going to get looked at if you want to move on to that next level or go higher. But some people are content sometimes, and they'll do their 4 years because it's more than just basketball. They may have the major that you're looking for, and that's where the student athlete part comes in. That's going to do it for tonight, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've been away for 2 months, and my gosh, once tournament time hits, it's city to city to city. And it was concluded last week with the Final Four. Thank you, Tampa. Thank you, Urban Media Today, for letting me cover it. Thank you to Coach Staley. Thank you to Coach Safer for letting me do the post-game interview. Thank you, NCAA. I had a blast. Thank you to the coaches that were personable to me and, got to meet a number of new coaches as well. I had a really good time. I can't wait for Phoenix next year, where the women's Final Four is next year. I will be having some major announcements coming. We have some big events coming up in Atlanta. So coaches of every level, you will be invited as well. But I want to keep using this platform so people can understand where to get exposure. When you do meet coaches, how to talk to them, what they're looking for. It's not about, oh, I put up 30 points, I'm going to get an offer. There's only maybe about 20 to 25 kids in Division I that average 20 points per game. So you have to be able to do more than that. That's going to do it for tonight. Thank you guys so much again. We'll be back next week. We'll have one next week, and then we'll have 2 shows the following week. We'll have a Sunday show, and then we'll have a Thursday show. We have some new coaches, as there's been a number of coaching changes. So I'm going to bring some of those new coaches on to talk about their new programs. And like I said, as they like to say, we'll keep spreading the gospel about women's basketball. You guys have a good night. I'm your host, David Jones. Take care.